My name's Neil Corner. Born in 1937. My mother said the first word I uttered was car. My father used to race motorcycles before the war. When I was married in 1961, we started buying a few racing cars, which I raced. And we had a nasty habit of keeping them for as long as possible. And this old girl here, the Sunbeam, has had 3 owners since the war. It's had a man called Abbott who rebuilt it in 1950, and it's exactly in that condition today. I bought it from my friend Jack Sears, who raced it very successfully, and I bought it off Jack Sears, and I've had it for 57 years. It's got no front wheel brakes. It's got a top speed of just 100 miles an hour. It handles beautifully for an Edwardian car. You can drift it round corners like a Maserati 250F on those skinny tyres. It's great. And I'm sorry to see it go, and I hope the lucky man that ends up with it enjoys it as much as my family has.
Tell me about some of the car's racing heritage.
Right. 4 were built due to the TT in the Isle of Man in June 1914. 1 won. We don't know which one won now, but 1 won, and the others retired. The race was in the Isle of Man. It was 6 laps of the existing 37-mile circuit on Saturday. Then they locked the cars away overnight, and they did another 6 laps on Sunday. So it was 12 laps in all. When the race was finished, they went back to Sunbeam in Wolverhampton, and of course war broke out. But just before war broke out, Sunbeams went to the French Grand Prix, so they took these engines out of their cars, and these chassis had a 4-litre engine fitted to them to go and do the French Grand Prix. Anyway, after the war, Sunbeams were left with all these bits and didn't know what to do with them. So they took off the shelf their current sports car chassis, which this car has, and they put the TT engines, gearboxes and all the running gear on the new chassis. As 3 of these cars survive, the other 2 have had their chassis shortened to the original length in the TT, which is unfortunate in my opinion because they won't handle like this car handles. This car with its slightly longer chassis is what makes it such a pleasure to drive, rather than the little short chassis ones. So it was found in a derelict condition after the war. Actually, before the war, it was owned by a man called Wills. Now, Wills was the biggest cigarette company in England, down in Bristol. And Matthew Wills bought the car from Sunbeams, with this chassis, and it ended up with a man called Abbott in 1948, who was a very, very good engineer. And we called him Uncle Abbott. And Uncle Abbott rebuilt this car exactly as it is now. That's exactly as it was. It's never been painted, and apart from an engine rebuild, it's never been touched. And Abbott sold it to the Sears family, and I bought it from Jack Sears. So it's only had 3 post-war owners.
What makes this car so special, in your opinion?
Well, the man that I bought it from, Sears, said the sonorous note of the exhaust always brought music to my ears. So it looks good, it's superb to drive, and it sounds great with that twin-cam engine. It ticks every box. There's not one thing. It makes a complete package. It's good at everything.
You're going to miss it, aren't you?
I'm going to miss it dreadfully. I'm very, very sorry to see it go. It's been with me and my family for all that time. I will miss it enormously, but I hope whoever gets it will appreciate it for what it is and leaves it in this condition. All the patina on the car, etc.
I'm sure they will. Fantastic. And there's a number 4 on the engine bay. Do you mind?
Yes.
IOM4?
Yes.
Do you mind just referencing
IOM4 is the engine number. The chassis numbers didn't have any chassis on them when Sunbeam released them in 1921. So the only thing is the stamps on the gearbox, the back axle, all over the place, but the engine is IOM4. That doesn't mean that the chassis number was 4. So it's a hazy bit. Oh, but we do know that that car is exactly as it was, apart from the body, as it left Sunbeams in 1921.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay.
It's 110 years old. It's
Yeah,
tricky to not
yeah,
believe.
exactly.
Tell us how your son learned to drive.
Well, Nigel's... how old are you? Are you 58?
Yeah.
When he was young and he passed his driving test, struggled past his driving test, we had the old cars, and I said, come on, let's go and learn to drive on the Sunbeam. I said, it goes very well. I said, it's got no front wheel brakes, so if you lock up the back brakes, there's nothing else you can do. The idea is not to lock them up, but if you can drive this car properly, without front wheel brakes, with a crash gearbox, and handle it nicely, then we'll progress to other things. And so he learned to drive on this car.